Has anybody seen the America's Untold Stories? You've seen it, right? Let me tell you something. I'm just glad to be in Texas right now. I mean, I'm living in LA where our highways catch on fire and I'm living in Mad Max, I mean, the movie itself. So I'm glad to be in the separate nation of Texas. And I've been here a number of times. Hey, the judge is here. How you doing? Wow, I haven't seen you since Mobile. You know what? It was Montgomery. I just woke up. Thank you. Anyway, we're in town for the Lancer Conference staying at this crazy Lorenzo Hotel. I feel like I'm in, an Alice in Wonderland building or something. I woke up this morning, there was a paintbrush glued to the ceiling above the bed and mirrors I don't want to see all those mirrors. I know what I look like. I mean, this is a hotel designed for 20-year-olds. I mean, I'm in the wrong hotel. But you people, just looking around, no offense, are my demographic, right? You don't have to put the lights on. I know who my people are. I know. You people look like me, and I look like you. We both saw this thing. I'm assuming we were all alive, right? I could talk to you differently than I can to a younger audience. I did an interview the other day with a kid, I don't know, it was Chris Kroc on WBAP out of Dallas. And I told him that audio was from his predecessor live from WBAP that day. That's the guy who did that from the same station. This kid still thought Oswald was the lone assassin. And he's going, can you explain the whole thing to me? And I'm going how did I get into this hell of an interview with this kid who believes that this was the lone assassin after everything I have 500 videos up there, not all of them about JFK, but there's so many books. You've had so many incredible guests that Mr. Keener has brought up here, from Robert Groden on down. I've watched these videos from afar, first of all saying, where the hell is the city of Allen? And second of all, who's running this library? Because this is the greatest library theater of all time. My library, they're still wearing masks and checking us at the door, Anyway, it's not my first trip to the rodeo, meaning Dallas, and I've been here before, and I'm very comfortable in the state of Texas, let me put it that way. If I can balance this up, like a balancing act or something. So how did I get involved in this mess? Went to PS 194. I'm obviously a son of the South, as many of you could tell, South Brooklyn. No, I'm serious. I went to a school, PS 194. We were in the schoolyard playing punchball, which is an odd urban game. I think I may have covered it in one of our episodes about urban games. And there was a guy with a radio, a transistor radio. And he said that the president had been shot. And the teacher rounded us all up and sent us home for the rest of the day. And I lived across the street. So I went home, and my mother was there, and we put on the TV, which we were glued to until Mr. Rubenstein ended Oswald's life on Sunday. And I thought, man, that's one hell of a weekend of TV. From Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I mean, there was never a weekend like that. And I've seen the moon landing on TV. I've seen a lot of stuff on TV, but that was an incredible set of 3 days on television. And keep in mind, my parents, who I've never, they were spooked by this, and they were so spooked the year before. The only time I've ever seen them really spooked was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And my mother had our bags packed to go to the mountains and escape New York. And I've never seen my parents scared in my life like they were the year before. And that was during the Cuban Missile Crisis until a year later. And you talk about back-to-back years. Wait a second, sir. What's going on?
For your drinks.
Oh, for my drinks. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff here. Thank you, Tom. So anyway, so they were spooked. They were spooked the year before with the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was spooky. We were heading back to the mountains. We had just come from the mountains for the summer, and I thought this was odd. So I think I got childhood trauma or some sort of PTSD from all this crap. I don't know about you, but I felt like it was so part of our consciousness. You know, when I look at this, you forget that you're watching a murder in real time on somebody's home movie named Zapruder, and we now look at it, we've seen it so many times that we kind of get numb to it. But this particular video really showed how vicious and viral and dark the crime was on that day. And look, so many people have looked into it, and I'm not a specialist in any one area. I mean, there's guys that we've had coverage from, like Vince Palomara, who is specialized in the Secret Service, Robert Groden, who's been up on the stage, who specializes in the film angle. I just cherry-picked a lot of stuff when I was a kid. I started reading about all this stuff when I became 12 or 13 years of age, and started to just really read the Warren Commission report at a very young age. Not that I had any power or any sort of gravitas to do any of this stuff. I'm not an expert at the age of 12 or 13. But I just remember looking at it and just saying, this doesn't smell right. You know, it just seemed not to add up on paper. It just didn't seem right. And obviously, if you've got a guy who supposedly kills the president on Friday and he's dead by Sunday, that's one hell of a CSI episode on CBS. I mean, that's a little bit much. So I never really bought into it. I didn't really do anything about it. I read as much as I could about it over the years. And, you know, how did I get to this point? You know, I started out, in high school and then college, and I got a job working for the National Lampoon as an editor, and then I got successive media jobs over the years, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes during this presentation. But I, felt that there must be something to this. And years later, when I created America's Untold Stories, which is on YouTube and Rumble and now Locals, and, I'm sure the deep state watches every episode and dissects everything I'm saying, and I'm sure they're here tonight. And, I just said that there are certain things happening today that have resonance and echoes of 1963 and other stories that have happened. If you follow the channel, I did an episode on William Donovan, the head of the OSS, and it has resonance to the CIA today. I did episodes on the legendary General Smedley Butler. If you follow that episode, you can see that this man wrote a book called War is a Racket, famous general, and it has resonance to stuff today, which is why I do the episodes. I don't do them because they're fascinating stories, which they are. I do them because they are being resembled and echoing events of today, if that makes any sense. So any of those episodes you look at on America's Untold Stories, other than my own personal crazy episodes that are on there too, of going to jail and going to a bungalow colony and working in a coffee shop that my uncle ran on 42nd Street, a lot of the things are like failed movie projects. They're like, if you go to watch the David Steve story of a guy, a heroic American, who took up a T-33 fighter plane to transit it from basically San Francisco to Nevada, and the plane goes down in the high Sierras and he's given up for dead, and he finally survives after 30 days in the mountains being stalked by a mountain lion, comes out and they give him a parade. And then they say, where's your plane? And he goes, I don't know. And they said, well, you're obviously a communist and sold it to the Russians in Mexico. And he says, what? And they turn on him on a dime. And I thought, now this is a great story. So I went into the Hollywood bigwigs and told them this story. And, a lot of them are not interested in this type of stuff. They want to make movies about, mermaids or, squids. I don't even know what they're doing, but you tell them a real story and they look at you like from another planet. And I grew up in a storytelling culture. I mean, I'm half Irish and half Jewish. I didn't know whether to drink or save my money growing up. It's really a confusing situation. I mean, I would drive around on St. Patrick's Day looking for discount liquors, if that makes any sense to anybody. But I think the poetry storytelling side comes from the Irish half, and the reporting and investigating and humor comes from the Jewish half. I mean, my mother was Jewish, my father was Irish. My mother was the president of Jews for Hitler. She said I wasn't taking any chances, just in case. She was the only member. She made herself the president. But now it has resonance today. Who knows? I mean, maybe she was ahead of the curve. I don't know. Anyway, I'm cracking myself up here. Where were we? Oh, yeah. So I became a writer, and I started writing stuff. I don't know if people were interested, like my high school newspaper, whatever, you know. And I ended up in this job at National Lampoon as a magazine editor. And I don't know if anybody knows the history of that magazine, but I replaced a guy like P.J. O'Rourke. I was in after him. He was a conservative satirist. People know P.J. O'Rourke, one of the great writers on the conservative side, number of books, fantastic wit. And there was a guy named Doug Kenney who started the magazine. And Doug Kenney did a lot of visual, political, dark satire. And I resonated towards that, towards the art as opposed to the words. And I tried to, because I grew up on comic books and baseball cards. My grandmother worked for Topps baseball cards in Brooklyn. And she would bring home cartons of baseball cards, from her job. And I dominated the neighborhood because I owned hundreds of cards. And I don't even know if I should tell you this, but I was so greedy and corrupt that I glued the heads and tails together of matching cards. And when you were flipping cards, I'd have a card that was 2 tails and another card that was 2 heads. So I couldn't lose. If anybody knows how to flip cards and baseball cards, it's so corrupt. I'm embarrassed to even tell you this right now, especially with the judge sitting here. I mean, anyway, so I collected these cards and we did different things, and I grew up out of that, and I ended up going to school and learning how to write, and I started writing for this magazine, and becoming part of this political dark humor culture. And for some reason, I don't understand why, comedy and the Kennedy assassination have gone hand in hand. I had a friend named Richard Belzer. I don't know if people know who he was. I think he was on CSI for 30 years, playing the same character on every single crime show. But that was the second part of Belzer's career. First part was being a stand-up comic. And he had written a book called Hit List, where he took about 100 people who were murdered, who were witnesses to the Kennedy assassination. And there seems to be a lot of comedians. Bill Hicks from the great state of Texas was one. There are a lot of comedians who know a lot of stuff about the Kennedy assassination. I think it's because we have a lot of free time sitting in a hotel room, in the morning, not doing anything until the night, But anyway, so Belzer I knew pretty well, and he was an expert on the JFK assassination. And, we compared notes, and other people that I knew, we'd gravitate together, people who were on the fringes of show business or in show business, doing different things in the comedy world or the film world. There are people out there who know this genre really, really well. And later on in life, when I started to meet the Vince Palomaras and these other people who specialized in parts and niches of the assassination, I was completely impressed. There's a guy named Greg Parker. We're in town for the JFK Lancer Conference. That's why Tom dragged me here. He called me 85 times at home, and I kept saying, "Who is this? How did you get my number?" I still don't know how you got my number. And he just kept calling me at 5 in the morning. I'm half asleep. "This is Tom Keene. Are you going to do the show or not?" I go, "All right, stop browbeating me. I'll do your show. Where is it?" I'm in Allen, Texas. I go, "Where?" Now I'm glad to be in Allen, Texas. I'll tell you that right now. Anyway, thanks, Tom, for making me do this. It's a great pleasure, great honor. And when you look at the roster of videos that they have and the millions of views, right? The millions of views that have reached out from this tiny little library to so many people around the world, it's amazing. Videos on, like I said, Proctor, who does the radio, the phone call that Oswald made from the jail cell to Raleigh. I mean, there's so many great videos out of this that Tom has created out of thin air from this little venue in Allen, Texas, putting it on the map, and I mean the map of the JFK genre map, that people everywhere know about the City of Allen film series or video series that Tom has created. So thank you again for doing that. So I started to work for this magazine. I started to put together some political dark satire. And I copied a guy named Doug Kenney, who was my hero. I don't know, my hero personally. I never met the guy, but he had fallen off a cliff in Hawaii. He either jumped or fell. Nobody's really sure to this day. But he was one of the founders of National Lampoon. And I don't know if we could maybe show a couple of little pieces that I came up with from these clips, if these guys back there, if Todd could possibly put up some of the writing scans. I just want to give these guys a sample of some of the stuff I did at Lampoon. This is a thing I did, and the reason I did this was partially because of the baseball cards I told you from my grandmother. And I also noticed a piece in the New York Times one day. The Associated Press had taken the mass murderers of America and ranked them like the baseball cards would do of home run hitters, like with Babe Ruth on top. And going down the list, they had used the same typeface, I don't even think they knew what they had done, the Associated Press. They had ranked the mass murderers in order like they were the home run hitters in Major League Baseball. So my sick mind says, these looks like baseball cards to me, right? So I went to the art department at Lampoon, which is an unbelievable art department, and I said, I have an idea, and by the end of the week, we had created this iconic piece called Mass Murderer Trading Cards, Series Number 4. Series Number 4 is a joke, since there was no 1, 2, or 3, but the beauty of it is when you open the magazine and you saw this page of these mass murderers, Whitman, hey, one of your homegrown boys here, huh? Okay, up in the Texas Tower. My old friend Kinky Friedman once told me that there was a rumor about a tumor nestled at the base of his brain, which you can hear in Kinky Friedman's song, The Ballad of Charles Joseph Whitman, that I highly recommend, one of the great Kinky Friedman songs of all time. Anyway, so I put together these baseball cards, and I wanted them to look like baseball cards. So when you turned the page, you would see the back of the baseball card. And that's how the next page looked. So you would see like Union Carbide, you'd see the statistics, and I put together some names of actual victims. I mean, I did some homework. I wasn't just making this up. There is some research behind this, and I thought you can get more out of this. There are more to these people. There's Albert Fish, there's James Huberty, Edward Gein, Richard Speck, who we all know, Charlie Starkweather, who was played by Charlie Sheen in a movie with Sissy Spacek, by the way, a great movie. Harvey Glattman, the rope murderer. Anyway, so on the other side are these guys' stats. And it looked like baseball cards, you know what I mean? But I had done this as satire, as a political black satire in the spirit of National Lampoon. Well, this became an issue because nobody had ever done these cards before. Now we see cards for everything. There's all kinds of different political trading cards. This was the first time it was ever done. And it was not released as a set of cards, despite what people think. It was only in the magazine. We never released them as trading cards or sold them or anything else. It was just done for this particular purpose. And I think there's some little things down at the bottom there. The cards themselves created such a media storm at the time that I had to do a lot of press to explain what was going on in these cards. But anyway, this was my first intro into, media murder, celebrity murder, true crime is what they call it today, right? I mean, there's a million true crime YouTube channels, there's true crime magazines, books. None of that existed back in, this is 1985, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. But back then, there was nothing. And now, it's everywhere. There's true crime on A&E, there's true crime here, true crime there. Anyway, so I started to do these visual art things, which I really liked, because writing is a bitch. Writing's hard work. You really don't want to be a writer. That means a lot of rewrites and a lot of other work. So if you could come up with some visual images. There was a time when they apprehended the Nazi war criminal Klaus Barbie. I think he was either in Paraguay or Uruguay or my way, but there was a debate in the media, and as crazy as this sounds, they were going to try him in France for crimes against humanity because he had deported hundreds of thousands of Jews to Auschwitz and to Buchenwald, and he was finally apprehended. And there was a debate, mostly in the European media, as to what Klaus Barbie was going to wear at his trial. Like, this is important. They were saying, is he going to wear his SS uniform? Is he going to wear a suit and tie? Is it going to be Armani? Who's going to... I mean, this was really a thing. Like, what is Klaus Barbie going to wear at his crimes against humanity trial? That's how crazy this was. I think it was around 86. So I thought, well, it reminds me of, like, when you were a kid, there was a thing called color forms. There was where you cut out little outfits and you glued them on to a sketch. I don't know if anybody remembers color forms, but I thought the Klaus Barbie doll would be of interest to the American readers. So you could cut those out and put that on the body of Klaus Barbie. I even put in a German Luger, a number 3 there, for effect. And then the writing explains, what does a man wear to work when his job entails 48 hours of grueling interrogation? Help the Butcher of Lyon, which was his nickname, slip into the wardrobe that helped him earn his colorful moniker. And don't forget that blowtorch, those French resistance fighters, can be so obstinate. That's 4, 5, and 6, the blowtorch, which you see here. Dark. No, I know, it's dark. That's right. That's right. I'm to blame for that. That's how sick I am. I also threw in the Lederhausen up there with number 12 with a beer stein, which proved to be a little prescient because years later I learned that Mengele would come back to Bavaria for Oktoberfest every year. That's how out in the open, the Mengele Farm Company was still, farm machinery company, still operating in Germany. It's their John Deere of Germany, and it's called Mengele Farm Equipment, and that's the Mengele family. But forget about Mengele, this is Klaus Barbie. And then the 15, of course, would be the jail costume, you know, of Klaus Barbie, 16 with the cup, 17, the ball and chain. It's a little much, I know. But the point of the matter is, this was like the cover, I think. This is a Gay and Wilson, the legendary Gay and Wilson cover, the Back to School issue. I think it's 1986, with the frogs dissecting a human. Gay and Wilson would go on to to do many cartoons for the New Yorker, and just an amazing, amazing artist that we had access to all these amazing, oh, it's 1987, okay. Gay and Wilson. Then I did this National Lampoon Dirty Joke book where myself and a recently deceased friend of mine, Gilbert Gottfried, the legendary comic, went around New York for a year asking truck drivers, cab drivers, doormen, elevator operators, their most dirtiest joke they could remember. And we compiled for a year from New Yorker, working class guys, you know, and some women too, you'd be surprised. Some of the dirtiest jokes we can compile. And we put it into a book and it sold like hotcakes. And so you could blame me and more importantly, Gilbert Gottfried, because he's dead and can't defend himself. So don't blame me. And I did this thing called Sexual Jeopardy, the home game. And I stupidly gave this to Howard Stern years later after it came out. He made a thing out of it. But the reason I'm showing you this, and of course these are the answers to the questions, right? Just like Jeopardy. And then these are the questions. So just like, this is Sexual Jeopardy, the home game. Catholic Church, famous sex teachers, homosexuality, historical sex toys. And again, these are the answers, like 1626, Queen Christina of Sweden was born with 2 items as part of her anatomy. Anytime you're ready, people. Let's see what the answer is. What is a butt plug? No, it's down there. What is a penis and a vagina? I take that back, sorry. So anyway, the reason I'm showing you this is not for anything salacious, but simply because I was sued, and the magazine was sued, by Merv Griffin, who owned Jeopardy, the real game. And I'm telling this for the judge. I don't know if I told you this when we were in Montgomery, but Merv Griffin sued me personally. Now, I'm just a kid at a magazine, and here's Merv Griffin. He's big, he's secretly gay, he's running Wheel of Fortune, and he's worth $1 trillion, and he's suing me. So we go to federal court, and the judge is up on the bench reading this, and in his robes, cracking up, laughing, and says to Merv Griffin's attorneys, you know, there are parody laws in this country, and he just threw it out of court that day, laughing his ass off, and we left. It was only like an hour in court versus Merv Griffin, and the only reason I'm putting this up here is because the judge is here, and I thought you'd get a kick out of it. But not everybody's been sued by Merv Griffin. I could proudly, you know, my mother was so proud of me. She loved Merv Griffin. Anyway, so then I got a call one day. Somehow, that was Lampoon. I was there from like 85 to about, I say 89, 4 or 5 years there. And then I got a call from these people at this company, MTV. And they said, we'd like you to make a magazine for us, and we have an unlimited budget, and we don't care what you do. So I just hung up, figured it was my friends, right? And this guy kept calling back, and sure enough, they gave me money for this MTV magazine, which was really funded by Bertelsmann Publishing, a BMG, a German company, which was really ironic that they would be paying the Jews to make a magazine for them. But anyway, so I started making this magazine. I hired all my friends. I became like Jesus Christ the Savior. I gave them health insurance. You know, they just couldn't believe their luck. And that ran for a couple of years. I think we had about 250,000 circulation. And I literally had to learn to hate MTV more than any group I've ever met in my life. I mean, these were real corporate scum. They were so weaselly and so sleazy. I don't know if anybody's had that experience with anybody in the corporate world, but let's see here. Oh, then I went to the Weekly World News, which is another, Weekly World News is probably more accurate than the New York Times at this point in history. The Weekly World News, I was editor of that for a period of time down in Delray Beach, Florida. When I showed up, the owner was there to meet me, and the anthrax had just killed the photo editor of the National Enquirer, which was the sister publication to the Weekly World News. So I was there when the anthrax attack hit Florida, and the National Enquirer's photo editor died, opening up an envelope. The owner would eventually sell out and move to New York, got into a fight with Jeb Bush, the governor of Florida, over cleaning up the building of the anthrax. He didn't want to pay for it, the owner, and he wanted the state of Florida to clean it up, and Jeb Bush refused. And he said, well, I'm going to take my entire company with thousands of employees and leave the state, and he said, good luck. I mean, Jeb Bush had his own problems at the time. His daughter was running around with prescription for drugs going from one Rite Aid to the next. And he had famously said, Jeb Bush, that, you know, people who were drug dealers and drug people should be incarcerated until they got his daughter. Then it was pure rehab all the way. And it's another story for another day. But anyway, so I get to this Weekly World News. And, you know, it's obviously a humor magazine of a sort, you know, with there's a picture of Bush up there. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so I get a call. I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm in Florida. You know, I get a call from a woman at lunchtime, and she says, I've got a picture of Jesus in the clouds. And I thought, well, they have a lot of that. They really do. They have pictures of clouds that look like things all the time. You know, so it's quite common that people would send in photos of to this paper of configurations of the clouds looking like whatever, right? So I said, I think they have quite a few of those. And I didn't know, I just got there. So she says, no, this one's different. This one's really different. I said, nah, lady, I think, you know, they have a lot of Jesus in the clouds photos. I don't think they need any more, because they would buy these, They would pay for these. So she said, no, this one's different. I said, how different could it be? She said, it's Jesus and Karl Marx together in the clouds. I said, send it right over. We'll pay you right away. And I think we ran that Jesus with Karl Marx in the clouds. But, let me see if I could turn this page here. So this is the Weekly World News. Again, probably more accurate than the New York Times today. I mean, I remember there was a big kerfuffle with Trump and the owner that they had suppressed stories about Trump's affair with different women. That became an angle for some people. This is a box of stuff that I found in the street. It doesn't involve you, so don't look at that. This is part of another story. Because after this, it actually is a story that means something to me. That's from a piece I did for America's Untold Stories. If anybody has seen it, it's called Box of Broken Dreams. If you get a chance to read that story, it'll break your heart, because this is a story of an immigrant from France who comes to the United States to become a graphic artist or animator for Disney, gets addicted to heroin and ends up on the street, living on the street. And on the street, I found this box in front of a building, and I took it home and I looked at those videos. And on those videos are the home movies of this kid growing up in France, shot by his mother and father. And they look like any of our home movies, exactly the same. Different culture, same movies. And I watched one after the other. There were 4 there on the left-hand side in that box. And I watched all 4 of them. And by the time I got to the 4th one, it was a video of a guy working in a cafe down the street from me. And it was the guy. He had grown up on these videos that I was watching, and he was working at the Cafe Figaro right down the street from where I live in LA. And I put on my pants and I ran down the street, literally, to find this guy. And this French waitress came out and started crying. And I said, what is it? She goes, he was just here, he's in a bad way, he's addicted to heroin, and he's living on the street. Well, I never found the guy until I traced him back to France. And I found in the video a bar in northern France, and I called the restaurant bar, and they knew the guy. And in the story, if you want to see a story on America's Untold Stories, look up Box of Dreams, and it was a cover story. The reason I'm mentioning it is because I began working as an investigative reporter, feature writer for the LA Weekly, which is the Village Voice of Los Angeles. And I did an entire story on this, a cover story for the newspaper, on this thing called Box of Dreams, which got a couple of awards for myself. And it resonated with a lot of people internationally and nationally. If you ever want to see a story that'll make you cry, watch that story that I did with Eric Hunley. By the way, Eric Hunley is my partner. He's not here tonight. He's just, he can't stop eating, this guy. I don't know what it is. No. He's back at the hotel chasing people around to interview them, from the JFK conference. So we'll be doing a show tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the conference. I think that's sold out, but you can still watch it virtually. They have virtual tickets that you can watch and download it. And give it to that stupid nephew who doesn't believe anything you tell him. The real knucklehead nephew who just says Oswald acted alone. It's a good gift. It's a good gift. So anyway, so I find this box, and that becomes a story. I become, this writer in LA doing, after I've done all this magazine work, I start becoming an investigative reporter for the LA Weekly. And my beat becomes corrupt drug rehabs. Celebrity drug rehabs becomes my beat because every other beat was taken. To be honest with you, you try to get into, it's true, you try to get into a newspaper, people like, I'm the crime reporter, 31 years, you can't come here, So I had to develop my own beat. And the beat I developed was corrupt rehabs in LA. And it's a great beat because it involves money, celebrity, addiction, people die. I mean, it really is a lot of fun if you're a reporter. There's a lot of meat on that bone. And I would go undercover. One story, I went into a rehab pretending to be addicted, and I had to live in there, and I couldn't get out because the owner went to Hawaii and had a heart attack, and he was the only one who knew I was in there. So I was trapped behind this gate. Anyway, you could Google it. I think it's still online. You could read that. Anyway, I wrote a book about it called Rehab Nation, Inside the Secret World of Celebrity Rehabs. That is a book all about the history of drug rehabs in the United States, the history of celebrity rehabs, and you can buy that on Amazon if you want. It has nothing to do with JFK, but hey, drugs are fun. Anyway, so this leads me up to the story for tonight. Forget about all this stuff. Who cares? It was about the 50th. It was coming up the 50th anniversary. We're at the 60th, right? Boy, time flies when the JFK conference is coming to town, huh? So it was about 10, 11, 12 years ago. And I said to myself, I'm going to take a year off, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this thing, this JFK thing with Oswald. And I decided to write, I didn't decide to write, it became that. It's just like, Moby Dick or something. I wrote a mini-series. I began to write a mini-series. I began to research this thing. And I had known the bare bones of the story. I had known probably more than the average American since I was 13 about this story. And I started to research just Oswald by himself, just one guy. Not every aspect of the assassination, just him. And I wrote a 5-part mini-series. And it's 5 scripts, and they're 120 pages each. So multiply 120 pages by 5, this becomes a 10-hour miniseries, right? And my agent sends it out, and I get a call in the middle of the night. It's Oliver Stone. And he says, this is the best thing I've ever read. Who the f*** are you? And I said, who is this? It's Oliver Stone. So we begin this dance, Oliver Stone and I, and he's a very, very harsh guy, right? He told me the first day he was in Vietnam, he shot a Viet Cong out of a tree. The first day he was there and killed him. And the second day he was blown up. So he got like a Silver Star and a Purple Heart in 2 days, when he was in Vietnam. And I'm dealing with this guy, and he's a brutal, brutal, demanding guy. This is a poster for the, what I'm discussing. This is a poster for the miniseries. So when we were working on this project together, he would call me out for any questionable factoid I would try to get past him, anything. And there were some facts that I wasn't sure about. So what I did with the Oswald miniseries is if me and him were not certain of it, we left it out. That was our agreement. And we left out a lot of stuff that we couldn't really verify. So everything that's in the miniseries, like I said, which is 10 hours long, is verified by me and him, and he knows more than me. Nobody knows more about this, and it's surprising how much he knows. And if you look at the JFK film, which is held up under intense scrutiny since 1991, you will see how intense he is about facts. If you want to read a book about it, read the JFK Book of the Film, which is a book by him and Zachary, and it's essentially, I was telling somebody about this today, it's essentially the script is in the book, and it's footnoted. And every little factoid in that script is a footnote. And the reason it's a footnote is it's really the errors and omissions lawyers of Warner Brothers going through his script, vetting it, before they would release it. And that's why it's held up since 1991. And in the book are also the articles by everyone coming at him before the film was released, all the deep state stuff he had to suffer. He's a bulldog of a guy, and stubborn as the day is long, but he's a beast. The guy's a beast. And anyway, so me and him, got together to pitch this miniseries, which is not easy, for 10 hours around Hollywood. So these pitch meetings became like one-man shows. He'd literally go, as Mark wrote a thing, good luck. And I'd have to talk for 2 hours explaining a 10-hour miniseries. And in the room were not 2 or 3 or 4 executives. In the room, not because of me, but because of Oliver Stone, were 50 executives. The entire executive staff of Netflix, the entire executive staff of FX, the entire executive staff of HBO. And they're just looking at this stuff under a microscope, and we're pitching this thing around town. This goes on for a year, for a whole year, me and him. And finally, we realized that nobody's going to make this. It's a lot of money. It's political. It's a period piece. There's a lot of different reasons, deep state, whatever you want to say, it didn't happen. So what did happen was it became a calling card for me to use for other entrees to other work, which I've gotten many times. You know, I ended up writing a film called The Farm that became The Recruit with Colin Farrell and Al Pacino. Ended up in federal court, Your Honor, on that one. And turns out that the CIA decided to take my script, rewrite it, and send back the finished script to the next writer after me. And when we sued them, in discovery, we got the script pages, and they were written in Langley. They were rewriting my script, and I'm going, this is better than mine. Holy crap, these guys are good. Who are these guys? And anyway, so the film became The Recruit, and I ended up in federal court and won a settlement, blah, blah, blah. That's another story in a book called The CIA in Hollywood. If you want to just remember this, there's a book called CIA in Hollywood by Tricia Jenkins, who's at the University of Texas, a professor of communications, and there's a whole chapter on the story that I'm just telling you about the lawsuit, which is a great book. I can give a plug to Tricia Jenkins. Anyway, so Oliver and I go around, blah, 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 it doesn't get made. And all of a sudden, I get a call a year ago from Macmillan Books in England. They want to make a scripted audio drama out of my 10-hour, they read all 10 hours. By the way, another guy read all 10 hours in one night. He went crazy. He stayed up all night, this actor, read the whole thing 10 hours and said, I'm in. Calls up Oliver Stone, Shia LaBeouf, a good boy from Louisiana. He says, I'm in, count me in, right? He's in London. And we said, well, what are you going to do next? He says, I'm doing this tank movie with a guy named Brad Pitt. We're in a tank. And he says, once I'm done with that tank movie, I want to be Oswald in your thing. And we went, okay, great. Shia had worked with Oliver before in the Wall Street sequel. And then he went crazy. He ended up in rehab, and that was the end of Shia LaBeouf. But that's a story for another day. So anyway, I get a call from Macmillan Books. They want to make this into a scripted audio drama. And they were British, so I didn't trust them. You know what I mean? I got this thing about the British doing our history. I really do. It just drives me freaking crazy. You know, I couldn't go to Italy and say, I'm going to write a biopic about, Da Vinci. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my area of expertise. I got a thing with this guy, Christopher Nolan. He made a picture called Oppenheimer. I don't know if anybody saw it. He puts the flag up in the movie. It's got 50 stars on it in 1949 when we only had 48 states. I mean, this is the stuff, no, I'm serious. This is the stuff that I made America's Untold Stories for, to tell our own history by our own people, not have the British tell our history. And you know what I mean? Not have other countries tell our history. And it's a personal peccadillo. I'm in therapy now about it, so don't worry about it. Anyway, I got a call from Macmillan Books. They want to do this into a scripted audio drama. And I said, all right, I'm listening. What do you want to do? And they go, we're going to pay you this, we're going to do that, and blah, blah, blah. We're going to release it November 22nd this year. You know, you're going to go in the studio. It's not AI. They wanted to use actors, their actors. They had voiceover actors that they use, I guess, for these audiobooks that they make. So, you know, I said, well, that's kind of interesting. And they kind of like were Weasley and British and, you know, like using their super polite language that makes me nervous. You know what I mean? Like they all sounded like Simon Pegg, you know, the actor from the Mission Impossible movies. So anyway, make a long story short, that deal fell apart. I pulled the plug on it. And I said, you know what? I could do this myself with Hunley. He's a tech guy. I think the two of us can figure this crap out. So Hunley went to work in his laboratory up by the North Pole. And we started slowly but surely to put together our own scripted audio drama for the first time using AI. This is using AI. This has never been done. So all of the people that you're hearing in the scripted audio drama, Oswald, are the real people. Like we found Jack Ruby's, all of his audio. You run it through AI, it comes out sounding exactly like Jack Ruby. All of the Oswald stuff, it's eerie. It's eerie, it really is. I'm gonna play you a sample in a couple of minutes. And on the 22nd, on Wednesday, at 12:30 Dallas time, we're going to release part one, it's 2 hours long, of Oswald, the scripted audio drama featuring AI technology. It's never been done before. It's going to be on Locals platforms. Viva and Barnes are going to feature it. We're going to feature it. Rich Barris, if you follow the People's Pundit, Rich Barris, one of the great pollsters in America, he's going to feature it. So it's going to be on all these different Locals platforms for a reasonable price. And it's probably 20 or 30 bucks or something. And then you will receive a PDF of the actual script. So you can follow along at home, looking at it on the screen with the script in your hand, if that makes any sense. You're going to be hearing it, seeing it. There'll be montages of photos and clips like Tom had in his great video. And there's going to be music. And I'm going to play you a sample of this so you can get a feeling of what we're talking about. So we're also going to do something on this tomorrow at Lancer, so you don't have to go over there. Don't tell anybody. Just stay here. So I'm going to give you a sample of this, and on the 22nd, you'll be able to go to unstructured.locals.com. It's in the bio on the end of the last page, the back page of the bio. There's some links to how to get to this. And let's see if we can somehow figure this out here. Okay, so here's the cover of the script. It's Oliver Stone. I crossed out my address so you guys won't bother me at home. That's the original screenplay. This is part one of 5, as I said. So we're going to release the other 4 over the next few months. It's going to be like 1 a month. So it ended up costing $100, $150 or something. So anyway, so here's page 1. Give you a little interesting. I'm a Patsy, Lee Harvey Oswald. J. Edgar Hoover, the only thing I am most concerned about is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is a real assassin. There's an investigator for you. The committee believes, on the basis of the evidence available to it, that the President John F. Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. There's your government. Forget about the Warren report. There's your report. That's 1979. Why the critics keep funneling back and ignoring this is a question you should ask them, because the House Assassinations Committee was 1 billion times more in-depth than the Warren Commission. Warren Commission was creating a pastiche of a frame of a picture. These guys actually investigated shit, and that was the result of their investigation. So, okay, so we go to, here is the first page. We fade in. Now, just to give you a couple of notes here, which I'll get into when we do the Oswald episodes. His favorite show as a kid was I Led 3 Lives by Herbert Philbrick. Now, I Led 3 Lives, as people may remember, was a hit TV show, and he went undercover, Philbrick, infiltrating the Communist Party in America. And he came out and wrote a book, and they made a TV show about it. This is what Oswald wanted to be his entire life. This is at the age of 7. This is the opening act. Maybe you've heard this if you've ever seen the show where it says announcer's voice. That's actually about Philbrick, which is Richard Carlson playing Philbrick in the TV show. The book is great. The TV show is fantastic, and I highly recommend it. He was also enamored with I Was a Communist for the FBI. That was his 2 favorite things, Oswald. He wanted to be a spy from day one. That's all he ever wanted to be, was an intelligence operative. And that's what he became. That's what he became. So we open with this newsreel footage, kind of like what Tom was showing, but we go into more quick shots of Soviet testing, hydrogen bombs. I try to mix in some pop culture because that's my thing. Billy James Hargis, Robert Welch, the Secret Sam attaché case, if anybody ever had that. And then some more commercials, and then the famous statement by Cronkite, which we saw in that wonderful video right now, right before the show. And here is where the audio begins to come in. If Todd could somehow pull up the audio on this right about here, maybe we could do both, show that script and the audio simultaneously. Right, okay. Oh, here we go, okay. I'll try to do this. It's a little rough. We're doing this for the first time, so you're with me.
On behalf of Battalion Commander Major E.A. Hadal, I welcome you to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, California. You have 30 seconds to get yourself and your stuff off my bus and line up. Now move, move, move. Hit those happy yellow feet, ladies. Let's go.
I'll be reading that description on the real.
What's your name, son?
Oswald, sir. Lee Oswald.
Scary.
Get your eyeballs off me, recruit.
Yes, sir.
That's two sirs with a yes in the middle.
Sir, yes, sir.
Whenever a drill instructor says ears, you say open. Drill instructor says eyeballs, you say snap.
Sergeant Buell methodically lowers the weight of his steel-toed boot onto Oswald's vulnerable right foot. The air seems to still as Oswald, gritting his teeth, battles to suppress the rising waves of pain coursing through him.
Next time I'll stab that foot with a bayonet.
Let's see where we are here. Sir, yes, sir. Next time I'll say it with a bayonet. Okay, yeah. Okay, so you get the
feeling trapped. Can I take the top?
Sure. Cooler on the bottom anyway.
What's your name?
Henry. But they call me Gator.
Lee, and that's what they call me.
You sissies aren't thinking of getting some shut eye now, are you? Fall in. You've had your cranial amputations and now you all look alike. Do you all look alike?
Sir, yes, sir.
I must be getting old. What the hell did you just say?
Sir, yes, sir.
12 weeks to turn you gutless pieces of shit into Marines. God help me.
Sir, yes, sir.
Get it together, ladies. We're going to take a little midnight stroll.
Right.
Get up there, Private Rabbit.
At the top of the page. This is an earlier draft, so it doesn't line up exactly. But
Who do you see up there, Private Rabbit?
Sir, this recruit sees the ocean, sir.
Do you or do you not see the Son of God, Private Rabbit?
Sir, no, sir.
Get your ass down here, Private Rabbit. Private Rabbit, do you or do you not believe in Jesus?
Sir, this recruit is not an expert on theology, sir.
Where are you from, Rabbit?
Sir, New Orleans, sir.
Don't they have religion back there, Rabbit?
Sir, this recruit was raised Lutheran, sir.
You go to some rich boy school?
Sir, this recruit didn't finish public school, sir.
Where'd you learn a $50 word like theology? Don't eyeball me, boy.
Sir, books, sir.
Books? You must have missed the Holy Bible. Have you read the good book, Private Rabbit?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yours must have some pages missing, Rabbit. Give me 3 miles, double time. Go, go, go.
There's going to be photos in back of this, montage photos going by of this, of him in training that we have.
Oswald and his fellow recruits stand
That's me.
in anticipation.
But it's the AI me.
facing
I never
an
read
array
this.
of weapon parts meticulously laid out before them. The room is charged with a palpable energy as they survey the assortment, each piece representing a crucial component in the art of warfare. A single instructor stands awaiting the recruits.
This is a 7.62 millimeter M1 Garand, weighs 9.5 pounds, is 43.5 inches in length. It's a gas-operated, clip-fed, air-cooled, semi-automatic shoulder weapon. Muzzle velocity of 2,800 feet per second, with a range of 440 yards. Fires from an 8-shot clip with a maximum range of 500 yards. This will be your first assembly class on this weapon. We'll have 2 minutes to assemble your rifles.
The recruits jump on it. Oswald holds up one piece in each hand. He looks baffled but determined to get it done. The instructor walks around the room commenting on their progress.
The butt plate goes into the stock. The stock holds the receiver, the rear sight, and the operating rod. Don't forget the rear and front hand guards. Let's go.
So I think we get a little bit more here. Yeah, just a tiny bit.
In a wide open sandy field,
Yeah.
dozens of recruits in prone position shoot their rifles at targets some 300 yards away. Nearby, platoon 2060, Oswald's group, sit in a semicircle with their rifles, listening to Sergeant Buell.
A Marine is a killer. A rifle is a machine. A Marine and his rifle together make them a killing machine.
Oswald's platoon fires on their bellies from sand ditches, aiming at targets some 300 yards away. Sergeant Buell walks the line, making comments to the recruits. When he comes to Oswald, he stops. Oswald is missing everything.
What the hell are you aiming at, Private Rabbit? Are you blind?
Sir, no, sir.
Oswald fires again. He misses the target completely. A red flag slides in back of his target.
Shit, Private Rabbit, I haven't seen anyone get Maggie's drawers in 3 years. Give me that weapon, son.
Oswald jumps to attention, pulls back the bolt, and hands Sergeant Buell the M1. Sergeant Buell lifts the rifle, aims, and fires off 4 quick rounds. A spotter with binoculars studies the shooting.
I think that's it. But you get the flavor of what's going on here. These are real people, by the way. We use the voices of the people we could get our hands on, through audio and videotapes and things of that nature. But you get the flavor of being there. The training this is a guy who can't hit a target, but he's going to hit the president in a moving car from up in the building behind a steam pipe with a bunch of boxes. And here, he graduates, he does, get out of the Marines, and the rest is history, and we'll get into that. But I just wanted to give you a sample of the event that's going to happen on the 22nd. And I just want everybody to thank these tech guys in the back for pulling this off. Thank you. No, really, thank you guys. That was great work, man. Thank you. And now, if you have any questions, Tom's going to go around, I guess, with the microphone and do what he does. I don't know how this works. I guess it's a lightning round. You just... But I really wanted to give you a sample of that, and I hope you enjoyed what we've done. And thank you. We're tweaking it all the time, so it's getting tighter and tighter. Adding in more Foley. The sound effects that you're hearing are Foley effects. And we're going to add some music in the back and more pictures that will be in the background. You'll see some photos going by. Go ahead.
I advertise this as lone nut intelligence operative. I want you to give me one sentence. Pretend this is the debate. One sentence pro, one sentence con. That they were either, he was either an intelligence operative or...
Okay, well, the lone nut could be dispelled really quickly. I'll tell you why. There's a couple of photos you can look at of the so-called sniper's nest, which is really Bonnie Ray Williams' kitchen. He's eating a chicken bone sandwich on these boxes that he arranged, having a Dr. Pepper and a Newport cigarette for lunch. And the reason we know that is because Walter Cronkite told us that the sniper ate lunch while waiting for the president. And when the Dallas police go upstairs to the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, they see the remnants of a guy who ate lunch. Bonnie Ray Williams, this black kid who was up there at 12:30. And the Warren Commission tried to move back the time desperately of how long it took Bonnie Ray Williams to eat that chicken bone sandwich. They were fascinated that he ate a sandwich that had chicken bones in it. They asked him that for page after page. But the point of the matter was the arrangement...
Texas, we eat chicken with our bones in it.
No, I know. It's in the Warren Commission report. But the arrangement of the boxes by Bonnie Ray Williams was so he could sit on a box and have a little table with his stuff. And the Dallas police came up and they said, this doesn't look like a sniper's nest. So they arranged the boxes in different configurations. And the reason that's known is because the schmucks took photos of it. They have photos, these stupid schmucks took photos of various configurations of the sniper's nest. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
If you were to say one thing, now, because I work with police departments and I've known prosecutors, they can't go to the courthouse and prosecute somebody on speculation or hearsay. They have to have hard evidence, photographs, witnesses, fingerprints, DNA, so forth. If there's one thing that you consider hard evidence that combats the Warren Commission, what would that be?
Hard evidence? Well, I just mentioned the boxes, but you could take the rifle itself that's sent on a jet plane to the Quantico FBI lab that says there's no fingerprints on the rifle. And when they come back to Dallas, the rifle is sent back by jet plane, and they go over to the funeral home. They ask the funeral director to leave the room. They come in and take the palm print off of a dead body and put it onto the butt of that rifle. And how do we know that? Because the funeral director had to wipe the ink off of Oswald's dead hands to clean him up while he was in the casket. There were no prints on that gun until Dallas police took it over to the mortuary where the body was already dead. You could ask J. Edgar Hoover about it. You could ask anybody who was in the crime lab in Quantico. No prints on the gun. They come back, it's got prints on the gun 2 days later. That dog won't hunt.
What's the closest evidence we have that he was an intelligence operative?
Oh, there's quite a bit. I mean, you know, when he goes over and to the Soviet Union, when he goes over there and he is assigned, it's most of it's in the script. That's why when you see the script, when you see the movie of it, the audio drama, you'll understand it. But one of the best is the fact that he leaves the Soviet Union with his diary taped to his stomach and to his legs, and also Marina has part of the diary. And he goes to a safe house in Rotterdam, and in that safe house he's debriefed in Rotterdam as to what's in the diary. And as a human intelligence officer, I add the word human because what we needed was human intelligence. We had no satellites. We had no U-2 spy planes that would be able to tell you how a telephone works. When Oswald defects and goes to Minsk, what he is doing is finding out how everything works. How does the phone work? How does the bus work? How does the TV work? How does the post office work? That's what he's doing, and that's what he's writing in his diary. That's the human intelligence we needed behind enemy lines. The program, which had about 13 to 30 phony defectors, was across multiple intelligence agencies. Oswald was ONI. Robert Webster, the guy I did the episode about on Tuesday, if anybody wants to see another defector, was ONI. We use this shorthand saying CIA, but there's other intel agencies that you never hear about. The reason I mention ONI is because when they were subpoenaed to testify before the House Assassinations Committee in 1978, they came in and they said, "Where's your records on Oswald?" And they laughed and said, "We destroyed them all this week. What are you going to do about it?" Now that's balls. That's balls. The CIA tried to, be more opaque about it and fight with them and everything else. ONI simply came in and said, "We destroyed all the records of Oswald." That's on the record.
That's pretty powerful information.
Well, there's more on America's Untold Stories. You get your hand right. That's why we did it.
I'm going to, just a few more questions, and we'll come down and take questions for the audience.
By the way, if you want to see a framing operation by Dallas Police, I know you're a fan of Dallas Police, watch the movie Thin Blue Line by Errol Morris, and watch the work that Gus Rose, the detective who interviewed and interrogated Wesley Buell Frazier twice, lie detected him. Watch the framing of the innocent guy in that movie by Errol Morris, 1980s documentary. Same detective, same framing of an innocent man on film. If you want to see Gus Rose do his job like he did with Frazier, when they arrested Frazier, watch Thin Blue Line by Errol Morris. You'll see the same detective frame an innocent man in real time. And that'll convince you what he did with Frazier.
Oswald was the most important prisoner since John Wilkes Booth.
James Earl Jones.
John Wilkes Booth. And yet there are no notes, and they claim that they didn't have a recorder that day, or it was broken or something like that. Not video, but audio recordings were made in the 30s.
Yeah.
And yet, supposedly, the most important prisoner is not interrogated in the presence of a recorder. But more importantly, no notes.
Right.
Is there any, what's the apology for not having the notes?
It's not a question of apology. It's not an investigation. What is happening is a framing of a man, not an investigation. What the Dallas police did at that time was frame people that they felt were guilty. I'm not saying they thought he was innocent. They would take a man, and you could see this in Thin Blue Line, that they believe is guilty and build a frame around him to make it easier for the DA, in this case Henry Wade, who had like 85 cases eventually overturned and thrown out of court, possibly one of the most corrupt district attorneys in the history of the United States in terms of volume of sheer cases thrown out on appeal. They are trying to create a frame, and I don't mean framing a man out of thin blue sky. I'm talking about building a story around him, like building that sniper's nest. They looked at that sniper's nest and built it for 2 hours, took various photos of that sniper's nest to make sure it was what they wanted. And the only reason I know it is because I've seen the multiple photos these idiots took. It didn't assemble itself, they took photos of it. That's how I know they were framing a guy by building the sniper's nest, for Christ's sakes. I can't get any more evidence than that other than the phony evidence in Mexico City, where a guy shows up coming out of the embassy who is not Oswald. They say it's Oswald. There's a phone call to the Soviet embassy. It's not Oswald. How do we know that? Because it's in the transcripts of a phone call from J. Edgar Hoover to LBJ, telling him on November 23rd that the man in Mexico City is an imposter. The man in Mexico City who's coming out of the embassy is an imposter, J. Edgar Hoover says to LBJ. The phone call from the man that the CIA in Mexico City, David Atlee Phillips, claims is Oswald, is an imposter. How do we know that? Because J. Edgar Hoover is telling this to LBJ. It's not Oswald. Well, who is it? It's a cat named Geb. Who's Geb? Geb played football with Malcolm Wallace right here at Woodrow Wilson High School. That's who's coming out of that embassy. Was a great lineman, and Malcolm Wallace was a great football player at Woodrow Wilson.
Yes, he was.
1939. And the people who know that. They know who that guy was coming out of that embassy. Another intelligence operative, a friend of Malcolm Wallace.
I always find it, at the time,
This is your history here in Dallas, folks. I'm from Brooklyn. If I could figure this out, you could figure it out.
at the time, the press indicated Oswald was kind of depressed, dysfunctional lifestyle, dysfunctional childhood, and not very bright, and kind of slow. Well, Oswald spent a lot of time in Texas, and I can tell you, we Texans don't learn Russian very quickly. I mean, it's a very difficult language. We can learn Spanish quickly. We can learn French. Can't pronounce it, but we can learn it.
You could learn it quicker if you go to the Monterey Language School, which is run by our military up in Monterey near Big Sur in California, which is where he went to learn the language. Also, Obama's mother went there to learn Russian herself. A lot of spooks get sent up to the Monterey Language School because they have a skill of drilling a language into you quickly. And it's a military-run operation, and that's where he was sent to learn Russian.
But it tells me he was more intelligent than we thought.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a 118 IQ, somewhere in that area. I mean, as for the loner thing, he was voted president of his third grade class in New York City, for Christ's sakes. That doesn't sound like someone who was unpopular.
Also, I think he not only spoke Russian, but a little Spanish.
That I've never heard.
Anyways, I don't know that he was as fluent as he was in Russian, but he was quite fluent.
Oh, I mean, Marina thought he was a Russian native from, Lithuania or, Slovenia. She thought he was a Russian from the Baltics. I mean, a Russian speaker from the Baltics.
Now, last question before I turn to the audience. Des Moines Schutz is one of the most, even though he spoke before in the Warren Commission, his testimony was absolute pablum. Very generic, and he said nothing. But here's a guy who was part of the Russian aristocracy and fled after the Russian Revolution, spoke fluent Russian, lived in Poland for a while, and then made it over the United States. And Chief Curry, the chief of the police of the Dallas Police Department, and by the way, as you know, it was a state crime, not a federal crime, to kill Kennedy. And the Dallas police during the weekend from Friday until Monday were investigating it like a murder, a state crime. And then on Monday, the FBI shows up and says, "You're out of here, give us everything you have." And I've heard this for a fact, half the records that were sent to Washington have never reappeared. And then some of them came back to Dallas as a result of the request by the city of Dallas, but not everything came back. Now,
Sir, can you get to your question, please?
Yes,
we have
sir.
the audience waiting
Yes,
here.
yes, sir. Des Moines Schutz was a very wealthy oil man after the war, World War II, and here he was hanging out with Oswald and Irving. And I thought that was, Des Moines Schutz was twice his age, wealthy, and supposedly Oswald had no money and was living in Irving, which at the time, before interstates, it was a day trip to Irving from Dallas. What do you think that was all about?
Well, you have to ask J. Walton Moore, who was in the same building as Des Moines Schultz's office, CIA director out of Dallas, who assigned him the Oswald account when Oswald, he told Des Moines Schultz that Oswald had moved to Fort Worth and could he keep an eye on him, take a look after him, and Des Moines Schultz said yes. I mean, they had offices in the same building. You may have to ask him as CIA director.
Okay, Dr. Rose was supposed to do the autopsy on President Kennedy that night, Friday night. Dr. Rose had already done over 1,000 autopsies. He was the county, whatever the title is, coroner. And every Saturday night, he was at Parkland Hospital doing all the shootings and so forth. What he used to call the Saturday night shootings. So he had like 1,000 autopsies. He was a very experienced coroner. Yet, we're told, he said, it is a state crime has been committed. I have an obligation to do the autopsy on the president. Oh, no, you're not. So the CIA, the FBI took, or the Secret Service, don't know which, took President Kennedy out of the state and broke the law and not allowing our county coroner to do the autopsy. Any comments?
Again, the words that you're using, not you personally, but the words that you're using, it wasn't an autopsy, it was a construction of a crime the way they wanted it to be created. So the autopsy is not an autopsy, it's just a word that they've assigned usage of. And when you get into the weeds in the autopsy and smoke is coming out of the gallery and the doctor says, "Can you ask that man to stop smoking? You know, I can't do the autopsy." And the guy goes over and it's, Curtis LeMay, the general, who's sitting there with a giant cigar. That's not an autopsy, that's a celebration. The autopsy itself is reconstructing his head as they want it to be seen. There's phony photographs, there's people coming in with different film stocks, they're bringing in bodies that, as despite what David Lifton said, they didn't need to bring bodies from Texas. Bethesda Naval Hospital had bodies up the kazoo. They were bringing in different brains because his brain was gone. The brain that they put into the autopsy weighed 3 times the amount of brain that they had. This is why they went to Bethesda Naval Hospital, because it had brains, it had bodies, it had parts. They controlled it. It was an O&I Naval Hospital. You can't control Parkland Hospital. God knows what would have happened doing their things they want to do there. They had to go back to where they started, do it in Bethesda Naval Hospital under controls that they could control. I mean, the 2 guys doing it hadn't even done gunshot autopsies their entire lives, Boswell and the other guy. The whole thing was not an autopsy. We just used that word. They didn't investigate the tracks of the bullets. They didn't investigate the entrance wound. They called the doctors in Parkland. They're told by Perry or whoever, that this is really an entrance wound with a trachea cut over it. They don't care about that. They're constructing something here, like the Dallas police are constructing a frame. There are two parts to this thing, the framing and the physical construction.
The first time I was ever aware of what he's talking about, how they framed it, Tommy Lee Walker in 1953 or 4 was a black guy who just happened to be walking down the street, was his only crime, and he was executed for murder. We don't know whether he did or didn't. So they framed that case the way they wanted it.
The Dallas police are not alone at this. I mean, I come from LA. They invented this shit there. You know, I mean, there are police departments that do this better than others, and Dallas was very good at it.
I'm going to take the questions in the front. We'll go to the back, and everybody will get their share.
Just take away that microphone if they go on too long.
Hey, Mark, Texas Tom here.
Hey, Texas Tom, what's up, brother?
Oh, good. I'm enjoying your presentation. It's wonderful. And tomorrow, too. So how long have you and Eric been doing this secret project in AI? You sprang it on us this week, so.
Right, it's about a year.
Oh,
yeah,
very impressive.
He's a little slower than me, but about a year.
I'm Texas Tom's brother.
Oh,
he brought me out
wow.
from California.
Right. Where do you live?
It's Orange County.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We're almost neighbors.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for this. It's a great presentation. Were there any shooters then from the Texas Book Depository?
You know, I believe that, you know, there was a shooter on the roof of the Texas School Book Depository shooting down into Connolly. The angle of the bullets into Connolly is so steep as to indicate that somebody from the roof had shot down. Keep in mind, it goes from Connolly's right shoulder and comes out his stomach into his leg.
Yeah.
It's almost an angle like this.
So it's a big
There's
angle.
no angle to duplicate that other than the end of where the Hertz sign was at the Texas School Book Depository. So yes, and also there's film footage I remember seeing of Dallas police bringing down a gun from the rooftop down that fire escape. I mean, that video has disappeared, but there's still a scene of the cops down below looking at the rifle. That was a British Enfield 303. Not surprisingly, the same rifle owned by Buell Wesley Frazier that they seized out of his house with ammo and threatened Frazier with the electric chair if he didn't flip and do their bidding. They did 2 lie detector tests on Frazier, and Frazier finally got the message and came up with the curtain rod story. Why curtain rods? Because he'd worked in a department store the year before in the summer wrapping and shipping curtain rods. That's where that story came from Frazier.
So how many total shots do you think were fired?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 8. I don't know. It's hard to count. I don't know. Kellerman, the Secret Service agent on the passenger side, said it was raining bullets down upon us. Now, these are military guys. These are guys who fought in World War II. They understand what bullets raining down upon us is not 1 shot or 2 shots to the back. So I can only go by Kellerman.
Mark, with the large majority of the American people now that don't believe the Warren Commission, the government conclusion on this thing, and frankly, I don't think our country's been the same since this happened. What do you think the odds would be, or what it would take, to actually exhume the body of the president and look at the skull, look at the neck bones, where you could actually microscopically tell if it was an entrance wound or an exit wound?
I don't think the answer is in forensics. I think that ship has left the station. I don't think that's the answer. It's scientifically, you're correct. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But I don't think that's going to solve this thing based on the butchering that they did to the head and to the throat and to the body. I don't think that's really the way it's going to be resolved. I don't know how it's going to be resolved. I just don't know if that's the way it's going to be resolved.
Over here.
So 2 questions.
Nice. That's a great shirt, by the way. Where'd you get that?
I found it laying around in my closet, actually. Anyway, it is forensic related. You never hear any discussion about the science of blood splatter. And has anyone ever really done a deep dive? I mean, we know so much more than we knew 60 years ago. And the other part of this is, what is your observation on the Roscoe White?
I think the Roscoe White thing's a fraud. I think his son wanted to sell a diary. I think it's a crock of shit. As for blood splatter, it's not invented until the Chinese-American DA in Los Angeles invents blood splatter science, which isn't until years later. So the science didn't exist until he came up with it. Ironically, I think it was in the Holmes case, that Johnny Holmes, the porn star, who was in the Wonderland murders, that the blood splatter is first used as a science in relation to law enforcement, if that helps. Henry Lee, yeah.
Yeah, I discovered you with Alec Baldwin, and I hope you guys make another video with the new evidence coming out about that. But two things, the bullet in the windshield and Malcolm Wallace's fingerprint in the book depository.
What about it?
I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Oh, well, the bullet through the windshield is quite real. I mean, and the Wallace fingerprint is quite real. They're both quite real. And there's no way to excuse them. There's no way to get out of it. That's it.
This is zooming out a bit, and it might be putting the cart in front of the horse, but two parts to this question, and it relates to bringing this investigation and the results of it to a wider public audience. The first is, I'm wondering what your thoughts are about bridging the gaps between the different factions and fiefdoms within the JFK investigation community, because it seems to me that there are a lot of people who do very thorough investigations who become deeply, deeply attached to those investigations and become very begrudging to open or see overlap with other investigations. So that's the first part of the question. The second part is, how do we eventually bring the enormity of this to a wider audience without saying, oh, just watch trust me, just watch these 20 documentaries and read these 30 documents, and it'll be very clear to you. Because what I've noticed is that, and what we've all noticed, is that attention spans are extremely short, and how do we get basically the crucial connections to a wider audience as quickly as possible?
Well, to answer the second one, that's why I created America's Untold Stories, so it sounds like a normal person talking to you in these videos. I mean, I mix it in with humor so it's able to be eaten. You know, the humor is there not because it's a funny subject, but to make it more palpable to the average American to watch the videos. As for the first part, you know, the people who specialize in these areas, I'm not going to argue with a Vince Palomara over something with the Secret Service. I'd be a schmuck to do that. This guy has dedicated his life to studying the Secret Service involvement. And there are experts who study each thing. I don't know how you get them out of the silo, because that's their silo. But I don't know if you really need to. I mean, if you talk about Max Good, his documentary on Ruth Paine is the definitive documentary on Ruth Paine. I mean, I know things about Ruth Paine, but Max Good knows a hell of a lot more about Ruth Paine than I do. And Vince Palomara knows a hell of a lot more about the Secret Service involvement than I do. I mean, I know that when they were in this wonderful place called The Cellar in Fort Worth, that there was a comedian there. And the comedian came out. These guys are shit-faced on White Lightning, right? They've lost their guns in the bathroom. Some of them have lost their badges. They've got an 8 a.m. call. It's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning, a comedian comes out and does an impersonation of JFK and scares them out of their pants because they thought JFK was in the club. Now, how do I know that? Because the comedian was George Carlin, and he told me so himself, who was a friend of mine. So little pieces can be assembled of these stories if you know how to do research, and you come from my background as an investigative reporter, so you know a lot of people that do you absolutely no good. But like George told me that story, so that's a first-hand account of that night at the Cellar in Fort Worth. So I mean, that's how you bridge the gap, you know.
Well, I'll never hear the name Oswald again without thinking of Private Rabbit, so thank you for that. I think Oswald probably told a lot of lies in his life, but I think he spoke the truth one time when he said, "I'm a patsy." I think that, but if he didn't kill the president, then obviously someone did. I know we don't have a lot of time to go in this. I'll search your recordings on YouTube, you may have addressed this, but I only learned of this recently about the theory of George Hickey in the follow-up car, the large Cadillac.
Excuse me, I'm laughing inside.
Okay, see, I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Thank you.
Go on. You want me to address the George Hickey thing? Oh, the book Mortal Error is written by an Australian cop who said that George Hickey stood up with an AR-15 and blew Kennedy's head off from the car directly in back of him. We can't even address that stuff serious. No reflection on you, but I'm saying, no, I'm serious. What I'm saying is this is all deep state stuff that's brought out every year as a distraction. And if you take the bait, and not you personally, but if you take that bait, that's what they want you to do. They want you to go after George Hickey with an AR-15, blowing the president's head off where nobody sees it. I mean, it's just preposterous. But they don't care. They're trying to move the needle of popularity that Tom was talking about, of the American people believing that the CIA did this. Their non-ending job is to reduce that number in Gallup polls from the CIA did it to Oswald did it alone, and that is their constant battle. The mob did it as part of their genre. The Oswald did it alone as part of their genre. Look, if you work at the CIA, do you want to go to work every day saying, hey, did you guys kill the president? It's a little tense, you know. But they've come up with so many things. And if I could recommend the assassination movie, Mrs. Payne, one film, one documentary for you, is because it's a mainstream documentary. It's on Amazon. It's not a YouTube documentary. It's a real film by Max Good. Came out last year. If I could recommend one film for you, watch the documentary on Ruth Payne and tell me what you think.
Thank you, Mark. I think they call it chaff and redirect.
What's that?
Oh, they call it chaff and redirect when you're trying to look squirrel, look at the other story, right?
Yeah.
They don't want and the more crazy it is.
But it's weird because they create stuff.
It has the same credibility as all the other stuff. It's just washing it away.
Yeah.
That's common propaganda.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's classic. First of all, thank you very much for making this topic so accessible. I don't know how many people.
It's not so accessible. I had to drive for an hour in Dallas traffic. But accessible is like the next room in the hotel.
The thing you do, yeah, right, exactly, right. If you got
You're
one of those
using the
special
wrong
rooms,
words.
wheelchair accessible, right? So but making this topic so accessible on your podcast and all that, I don't know how many people I've pointed to it and say this makes it easy to understand and entertaining as hell, and you are a lovely storyteller. I was fascinated by watching this AI thing you're doing, and I think I heard you say that you and Oliver Stone researched this. Everything in there is real or validated.
Yeah.
So when I'm hearing that dialogue, you said you know who these people were, and how. Give us a little bit of how that happened, because that's a lot of detail.
These are real people that were in training with him. In other words, Delgado's in the Warren Commission. These are people who are in print on the record saying certain things. So I pull them out. The clips, the quips that they've made come from printed material. Yes. Yeah.
That's not clear. That wasn't necessarily clear.
Right. There's a page, I think, where it says all of these names are the real name. In the script, there's a part where it says all of these names and information are the real people.
So President George H.W. Bush, there's a story of him having made a call that day. What's your assessment of his role in the whole thing?
It's some random call from Houston, that he made about somebody who threatened the president. When you see the transcript of the call, it has nothing to do with Dallas per se on the 22nd. I mean, he will later go on, obviously, to be the director of the CIA. So this is not a guy who's not familiar with intelligence. It seemingly, and it's just my opinion, seems to be a call from Bush after the event that some guy was suspicious to him, that he thought you should check this guy out, a particular guy. That's my takeaway from it.
Let me first not come over.
The Max Good documentary on Ruth Payne and Morgenthau fascinate me. And something I've wanted to share with you since I saw Max Good on your show.
Right.
Years ago, I read a book written by DeMorgenshield,
Right.
and in it, he says that the way he met Ruth Paine was that she led the bells at church, and he was in the choir.
Weird.
Yeah. And that stuck with me for some
Well,
reason.
She denies really even ever meeting him.
She says she met him at the party.
Right.
Right. So, and she talks about that. He asked her about it. That's what kind of rung the bell with me. So, just something I wanted to share.
It's hard to judge it because you're dealing with two professional bullshit artists for a living. You know what I mean? So they don't care if their stories don't match up. You know, Oliver told me one of his biggest regrets of the film was changing Ruth Paine's name to Ruth Williams in the film. He and Warner Brothers were afraid that she was litigious, and he regrets having changed the name because he believes now that he could have gotten a lot of information and discovery if she had sued him civilly. So that's just an inside Hollywood story. Don't tell anybody, please.
Okay, quick question. What are the chances that the guy that shot Oswald corrected the police about what Oswald was doing down in New Orleans at the press conference at the police station?
What's the question? I'm sorry?
Jack Ruby?
Yeah.
You remember at the police station, he corrected the police about what Oswald was doing down in New Orleans.
Oh, right, the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Yeah, he was stalking him from Friday night on. I mean, he had picked up the money, the $50,000 that Ruby got. He had gone to Vegas the week before to pick up his pay. He owed the IRS around $50,000 in back taxes, which amounts to, you know, somebody said to me once, $50,000 just to kill a man. Well, that $50,000 today is $509,000. That's how much Ruby was given to kill Lee Harvey Oswald. And he went to Vegas to pick it up. He bought a safe, had an off-duty Dallas police officer help him bolt it to the floor of his office in the Carousel Club, put the money in the safe, gave the combination and signed over the power of attorney to his lawyer and told him to take care of his back taxes from the IRS. And then he went, took a bunch of Dexedrine, which he loved to take, and took one of his dachshunds and went to the police station and did what he did.
One more question on DeMorgenshield. Can you go through all the people that DeMorgenshield was tied to? Because, you know, like Jackie called him Uncle George when she was a kid, and then all the people that he was tied to, President Bush and everybody throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, it would take a whole other episode. I think you might want to watch the channel that
We'll take the time. Go ahead.
No, I think we did an episode on it. You may... If we didn't, we will. I mean, DeMorgenshield and his brother, I mean, DeMorgenshield actually wrote reviews for Variety magazine, Tom. I don't know if you knew that. He wrote film reviews for a while. And he's got a real interesting past, as does his brother, and obviously connected to the Bouvier family, Uncle George reference there. I mean, he's as connected as you could get. Obviously connected to Bush. He wrote a letter to Bush trying to help him out at the end of his life, and Bush turned him down. Whether he blew his brains out or not, we don't know. If you listen to Bill O'Reilly, one of the worst books ever written, Killing Kennedy, which is, it's like the cliff notes of the assassination. Dear God. He says he was ringing the doorbell while he was blowing his head off. I highly doubt that.
You know, when Oswald was in New Orleans and then came to Dallas and then Irving and so forth, and then there's a timeline. He's here, there for a few months, and there for a few months. Until the book depository, he appeared to be unemployed for quite a while. Yet, I just remember in those days how poor everybody was. I mean, if you had gas to get to work, you were doing well. Yet this guy who's unemployed supposedly goes to Mexico and hangs out down there.
Never happened.
That would have taken...
He was in Austin at the employment agency trying to get a job. To revolve off your question, he was trying to transfer simultaneously his unemployment benefits from New Orleans to Texas, and he was at the employment agency in Austin looking for John Connolly, trying to see John Connolly because he wanted his discharge changed when Connolly was Secretary of the Navy. And Connolly was out of town. He called up the governor's office to try to deal with this directly. So there is a paper trail of Oswald in Texas at the same time that they claim he was in Mexico City. Why do we know that? Because the FBI interviewed all of these different people. And there's a file on each one of them, a report on
That's
each
an
one of them.
incredible story. One or two more questions, and then we'll call it a night. He said he could go another hour, so I guess we'll take a few.
It's okay, I'm on crystal meth. I could go all night.
Mark, I love you on YouTube. You guys are terrific. I assume you've seen the movie Executive Action?
Yeah.
Remarkably how accurate that movie was to reality.
Yeah, well, I mean, the script is co-written, I think, by Mark Lane, who put his fingerprints on it, and some other people who knew the genre, which is all you really need. Burt Lancaster, I think, is in it. And
yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's Will Greer.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a very good film on a low budget.
Wow. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Hold on just a second.
Just throw it at her.
No. I'll bring it over. There you go. Thank you.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
My dad's watching from out of state.
Really?
Yes. So I'm going to ask a question on his behalf.
Tell him howdy.
Howdy. Okay, so he says to ask about the ballistics of the two shots that struck Kennedy. The first one that struck both Kennedy and Connolly went through both men and was found and intacted, but the second one, the kill shot, exploded on impact. They claim both were shot from the same rifle. That dog don't hunt.
Well, he's right, but I mean, the bullet that shoots Kennedy doesn't hit Connolly. Connolly's hit by a separate bullet. He's referring to the magic bullet theory, because there's nothing to really traverse the body of Kennedy. The body, the shot to the right shoulder goes in about 1.5 inches, I believe, because of reduced muzzle velocity from a silencer, and the bullet that goes through his throat goes through the front of his throat. The headshot comes from the front. There is no bullet that hits Connolly that goes through JFK, which is why Connolly is shot separately from a steeper angle up above. I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, I'm not even a forensics guy, and if you look at the angles of the shots, you just notice that they're coming from different directions. Connolly's not shot by the same bullet. They frame it to make it that way. They work backwards. Arlen Specter is given the senatorial job of Pennsylvania as his payoff. Gerald Ford, who becomes president, moves the actual autopsy photo with his own pen from the back right shoulder to the back of the neck. So it comes out the throat. It comes from Gerald Ford. Why do we know that? Because the schmuck told us that he did it for the good of the American people. That's how we know that. He literally moved the autopsy photos with his own pen. And for that, he became president of the United States. So it's not a bad trade-off if you want that gig.
One of the questions I have is that Hubert Winston Smith was Ruby's second or third attorney. After Belli was fired by the Ruby family, there was a whole series of attorneys. One of them was Hubert Winston Smith. His son was on this stage 10 years ago, and his son claimed that the second Oswald said, "I'm a patsy," he was a dead man. And that was he was quoting Ruby talking to his father as an attorney. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a Oswald in every town. I mean, Thomas Arthur Valley is in Chicago. He's the potential assassin in Chicago. There's an Oswald that's in Tampa. There's an Oswald that's in Miami. This thing moves around the country till it finally ends here. I mean, wherever they went, there was a patsy in waiting when the event, if it could be pulled off. I mean, Thomas Arthur Valley is in a building in Chicago with tons of ammunition, and Kennedy shows up for this Army-Navy game at Soldier Field in Chicago, and they had to turn him around because of the Valley arrest by Chicago intelligence, and they may have been tipped off by somebody. But there's patsies waiting in every city. It's not a Dallas event, the whole world turning against Dallas. When it happened, it could have happened in Chicago, it could have happened in Tampa, certainly could have happened in Miami. It happened here, and if it didn't happen here, the next stop on the train was the LBJ Ranch for the massive barbecue on the next day, when he was not going to be allowed to leave that barbecue, I'll tell you that much. And the funny side story is Ralph Yarborough was upset that they weren't selling enough tickets to the barbecue because it was a Democratic fundraiser, and they didn't bother to sell any tickets because they knew that that barbecue was never going to happen. So Yarborough is sitting there going, how come the ticket sales are so low? How much money are we raising from this barbecue? But the real spot was going to be the Trade Mart, I believe, initially, and I think Connolly believed it was going to be the Trade Mart. It seems made to order, and Connolly was not in the loop on that. He fought tooth and nail, went to the mat to get the Trade Mart as opposed to the Women's Building as the final destination of the motorcade. And I believe that the Trade Mart was a place where they were also waiting as an ambush if Dealey Plaza didn't happen. He lied about it. He connived about it. He went to the Matt Connolly to get that venue. The Secret Service ruled it out. It was unprotectable. And the Women's Building had all the trappings of a event building. You people here probably know the physics of the Women's Building. And he literally lied to get this at the Trade Mart. I mean, he was determined to have that Trade Mart as the final destination. And if you want to see a film that uses a Trade Mart as an assassination location, look at the parallax view with Warren Beatty. Watch the scene of the assassination in the parallax view, and you will see what would have happened at the Trade Mart, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for that. And that's what I wanted to touch on was Connolly's involvement, because what was it? Jackie's memoirs was talking about how the night before that Kennedy and LBJ were arguing about Connolly being in the car.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, she said it was the loudest fight she ever heard her husband have with anybody, and LBJ was screaming at him. This is the night before in Fort Worth,
Right.
at 2 o'clock in the morning, to rearrange the seating to get Connolly out of that seat. And he couldn't do it. And LBJ was not taking no for an answer, but he did have to take no for an answer. I don't think Connolly knew about it, but LBJ was adamant, fanatical, loud, screaming at JFK about that man sitting in that seat. Now, I don't know why anybody would do that unless you knew that bullets were going to be flying the next morning or afternoon. And he wanted Ralph Yarborough, his arch enemy, the liberal Ralph Yarborough, who many of you know as a senator in the great state of Texas, he wanted that guy sitting in the seat. Now, why would somebody go to the mat over something like that? And JFK pushed back so hard because he said, I don't need a liberal sitting next to me. I'm here to get conservative Democratic votes in the state of Texas. Connolly will eventually switch parties. He will eventually get us off the gold standard as Secretary of the Treasury. I mean, nobody looks at Connolly. That is one slick mother. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, he definitely was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or maybe the right place, because he became a martyr. Afterwards, he became an untouchable.
What are your thoughts on how Eugene Brading was quickly seen running out of the Daltex building, apprehended? Of course, he gives him the police a false driver's license and lies about his name. And they said, well, we can't find anything on him. Let him go. Well, Eugene Brading was a very close confidant of Carlos Marcello. Any thoughts?
I don't know about his connection to Marcello, but you could watch my episode on Braden if you want to see the whole story. That's all I can tell you. It's a complicated story out of Beverly Hills. He meets with Hunt's son the day before, I think with Bunker or Nelson Hunt, and he's arrested coming out of the Daltex building. I think he was a lookout in the building from the second floor window that's an incredible perch for firing. That window was a mop closet that happened to have a window in it, and he was guarding that door not to let anybody in. He was seen by the elevator operator who notified Dallas police who picked him up, and he had not a phony driver's license, but he had changed his name the week before when he came out of Beverly Hills back to Dallas. So he had a job to do here, Braden.
One last question. Okay, well, got two questions. Hold on. We'll do two questions. Make them quick, please. Okay.
It's actually not really a question, but you may already know this, but maybe not. But I know how much you love the British. George Dealey, for whom Dealey Plaza is named, was born in Manchester, England. He immigrated here and became the publisher of the Dallas Morning News.
Well, to add to it,
fun fact.
To add to the fun fact, D.H. Byrd, the best friend of LBJ, bought the damn building and took the sniper's nest window with him and brought it home, and he kept it in his house as a souvenir. That's D.H. Byrd, the oil millionaire, D.H. standing for Dry Hole Bird.
Wasn't he Admiral Byrd's brother? The actual
I don't know about that.
Or they're related for sure.
Yeah, I know they're related. I don't think
pretty
it's his brother,
crazy.
though.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
There's
the
some
nephew.
connection. There's some connection.
Oh yeah. So was that R. Lee Ermey AI doing the drill sergeant? It sounds just like Full Metal Jacket, man.
We kind of smushed it together with a couple of guys. We kind of ran it through a couple of times, so it sounds
That was
like him.
awesome,
Yeah,
man. Thank
yeah.
you so much for all the info, man. It's the craziest channel anybody's ever seen.
Dude, it's insane.
Y'all have more. It's like
It's
everybody.
crazy.
Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's linked in the whole plot, man. It's insane.
I know, there are connections. I mean, we lay down these dots, and I can't really connect them all, but there's so many weird dots that we've uncovered.
Yeah.
They're there for people to watch and connect themselves, you know.
Hey, my name's Dave, and I brought a parting gift for you to watch on the plane. It's just a Chauncey Holt.
Debbie does Dallas.
Yeah, it was done here. We reproduced it. I put a little money behind it. No, it's just a Chauncey Holt DVD that you might enjoy, man.
Okay.
By the way, some of my questions that I asked earlier was to give a segue, because some of those subjects are covered on his channel in much more detail. And I want to tell you something. Don't argue with him, because you'll lose. Okay, the little lady in the back.
Last night, Brian Edwards spoke. How do you feel about his backs?
I don't know who he is.
Well,
Who's
he
Brian
actually is a co-writer on the admitted assassination, the Roscoe White story.
I don't believe the Roscoe White story, so I would have
that's what
trouble dealing with him.
Okay.
Mark Rubert, thank you.
Thank you. I love being in the state of Texas.